probably most of the clips are played at like 115% speed, just to make them look a bit
Yeah,
a
a
bit
little
better
faster.
around the cones.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Game Day Glare. I'm Lance. I'm with my boy E. This is the podcast for sports videographers. How's everything going, E?
Good, good. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. I've been pretty busy filming a bunch of different events. I actually got to film my son yesterday in an interview setting because we did
Oh,
a video for his hockey program. So I realized I filmed him so much playing. It was the first time I ever mic'd him up and filmed him. So it was kind of funny. And he was a little bit nervous, but he did really, really good. And he did it in French, by the way, so which
oh.
isn't his mother tongue. But no, it was cool. It was nice to have the two worlds collide where I got like to do my thing and then he came home and he's like, "Yeah, I did an interview, mom." So I'm like, "Yeah, the camera guy was the guy was really professional, eh?" He's like, "You call that professional?" I'm like for him, it was just like, just ask your questions and I'm getting out of here. He doesn't know the lighting that I put up or the accent lights, the jerseys that hung in the background. No concept. Just ask me my questions and I'm going to eat my lunch. That's it.
Were you the one asking the questions?
No, actually, they had somebody
Okay.
from the actual structure asking the question, so it was nice. I was just doing more technical stuff, but I have to do
Uh,
the edits. But it was kind of cool to have him mic'd up, and then I felt like a little bit of pride. I'm like, oh, that's my boy. So I took a little video of him, and I said, oh, it's the first time I get to film him, and I shared it on my socials. But it was cool. It was cool.
no, that's
Yeah.
nice.
What have you been working on lately?
Soccer. I've been working with kids as well, actually, like soccer camp. So not my kids, but a lot of them. So yeah, soccer camps promoting local schools here in Montreal. So I filmed last weekend and edited all week, and yeah, it was fun. It was different. The gimbal definitely got used. Allowed me to be because I think the oldest kids there were probably 12, so it was ages from like 6 to 12, so definitely being able to go down low with the gimbal without having to break my back it's definitely the way to go. And yeah, that way I could also run around, and because at that age, like, it's not like it's going super fast, so being able to move around and make it more dynamic that way, um definitely was definitely the right idea. And not gonna lie, I did use, like probably most of the clips are played at like 115% speed, just to make them look a bit
Yeah,
a
a
bit
little
better
faster.
around the cones.
So you were running with the gimbal up and following these kids? Did you get any like cool creative shots or try anything new?
Yeah, yeah. Well, depending on the drills, like it depending on what was going on, but when I could, I would definitely go in there and try to bob and weave, like going through kids, and so that's what I wanted to recreate. Like always, I'll almost like be like a defender and have the kids sort of passing me by and things like that. So when the drill sort of allowed it, I would definitely try to do that. And yeah, no, it was all right. It was perfect because I could be kind of close out of 35 mil, I think. So I could be kind of close and very low, and because they're like 4'2" or whatever, like I could still get full body shots. Um, so yeah, it was nice. It was different.
Well, so today's topic kind of will make this come back to what we're tie the two together. It's spring, right? So
Hmm.
you came up with the idea today. Let's talk about the advantages of shooting indoor versus outdoor and what's really the difference in this. Because as sports videographers, we're going to have soccer season and baseball starting and football. So we will be, inside gyms, outside gyms, and that. So today we're going to talk about the differences of it and the challenges you face because there are a lot of challenges. So your soccer video that you did, right now there's a little bit of snow outside. Was it inside? Was it outside? Or
No, it was still inside. It was yeah, the first one was at a kind of a rec center type thing where there's a few soccer fields and the pool and the this and the that. And the other one was actually nearby my house. They do this thing where the football field, there's like football teams that play there normally, but during the winter they have this massive dome over it. It looks like a Yeah, it looks like the football stadiums that have like inflated domes. It looks just like that, which I think is a great idea. Like, I was I had so many questions. I was like, man, why don't they do that everywhere? It's like, yeah,
They do
because yeah,
that in
even
Cambodia. They put it
yeah,
up
because
and then they
yeah,
take it back
exactly. That's
down.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's exactly the same thing. So it's like, much cheaper than spending like $30 million on a building, and then you get to play outdoors in the summer. So it's like best of both worlds, in my mind, anyway. But so yes, it was a place like that. So it's pretty cool because I see it all the time. It's my gym is right next to it, so I've seen it from the outside. So it was fun to actually go inside and see what the fuss is about. But so yeah, so it was all indoors ish. but but yeah, no, I like definitely yeah, I think it's a good idea to talk about that because there's obviously different things from equipment to filming techniques to preparation and all that sort of stuff and settings as well. So I'm excited to talk about it.
All right. So let's start off with a hard question right away.
Oh,
All right. So, what's the biggest surprise that you faced when you started off as a sports videographer from going from indoor filming to outdoor filming?
well, because the biggest misconception about filming outdoors is that because the sun's out, and obviously we're talking daytime, um, because the sun's out, like lighting is not an issue. Because always, if you're filming basketball and gyms and stuff, you always, it's not enough lighting or the lights are shit, different colors, blah, blah, blah. Um, Outdoors, you don't have that problem. So you think it's just everywhere you film, it's going to be pretty easy to expose and things like that. But then you realize that, first of all, there's shadows. So going from full sun at hitting the sun hitting like directly to like the shadows is just two completely different things. Sometimes, yeah, if you're in the shadows or at a certain time, everything can look, even though you're on the daylight white balance setting, everything can look very bluish. um yeah, so there's a lot of things that seem like they're just going to take care of themselves, but they don't really. Like, even when you do an interview, again, indoors, you're going to try to either set up a light or be next to a window or something, where if you're outdoors, you're thinking we can go anywhere and it's just going to be fine. But really, you have to, if the sun's behind you, then you're going to be backlit and the front is going to be like super dark. Or even if the sun's directly in front of you, the subject's going to be squinting and looking away, which is not good. Or sometimes they'll be like, we call raccoon eyes, because basically the top of your eye is going to create a bit of a shadow underneath. So yeah, there's all these things to that we don't necessarily think of when we start, and then we look at the footage and we look, why is my footage looking so bad compared to this other guy who's his looks amazing? And yeah, it's all these little settings and accessories and different things that you can use to make it better, basically.
I feel like for me personally, filming outside is harder. I know gym lighting isn't always consistent. I know it's not always great. You have flickering lights, you have LED lights, you have some gyms have different color temperatures throughout. But outdoors, you're stuck with what the sun gives you. And there's ways around it, with like, ND filters, or you could balance the light and stuff. But I feel like when I'm filming outside, I have this internal pressure when I'm doing, say, interviews, for example, to get them done in a certain amount of time, because I know the sun is moving. So yes, I'm set up for the shot. Say I set up 25 minutes before my interview shows up, my guest shows up. Well, by the time he gets there, technically the lighting's kind of changed already. Not so dramatically, but if I take over an hour, it will be different lighting at the beginning to the end. So I feel like I'm always rushed for time. If I'm actually filming the action, then even that too, you got to know your angles. You got to know where you're positioning, because the sun, you don't want that sun in, like, facing your camera. You want to have it to the back of you, unless you're trying to do a cinematic shot and you want it to kind of like, do like a flare or a burn, something like that. Then yeah, then you would film directly at the sun. But these are always things that I am thinking about constantly when I'm filming outside. So I do feel like inside for me is a bit easier. But we can talk about it, because basically you're going controlled environment inside and unpredictable environment outside, technically, right? And now it's our job to control the environment no matter where we are as videographers. And that's the challenge, right? Is you have to think of creative ways on how to control the environment and get the best out of your camera.
Because I think, like, in a way, you're right that it's easier indoors, because there's less, like, it's not easier in the sense that it's gonna look better. It's easier in the sense that there's less things that to worry about. Like, I'm not bringing, NDs, and I'm not bringing all these other things. So, like, for example, like for you, like if you're filming a basketball game indoors, like what are you bringing outside of, like, is there something that you bring that is specific to filming indoors, like accessories or anything like that?
Not really, honestly. I'm gonna work with the light that's there because you can't even really add your own light, right? But when outdoors, I would bring a bunch of extra things just to bounce or filters or
Well, again, it depends on what you're filming, but like you're probably not bringing a bounce if you're filming a game, but you're definitely bringing some filters.
yeah, yeah. I mean, indoors, I would bring the filters too, just in case, but I'm most likely not gonna use them.
Yeah, I'd say indoors for me, the only thing that I'm probably going to be a bit more on top of is my choice of lenses. Because, like, if I'm filming a football game, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to stay on my either 35 to 150 or 70 to 200, depending on how much space I have to work with. Um, but where indoors, I'm like, depends on how far the baseline is from the back wall. Depends on, do I have access all around? Or am I going to be stuck in just one or two different camera positions? Is the crowd going to be in the way? So, like, I better bring different options that going to make my job easier from depending on where I'm actually allowed to go and how far I'm from the action and from the crowd and all these different things. So from that perspective, like, yeah, indoors, I'll probably bring more lens options, and where outdoors will be a bit less stressful.
The only issues I've had indoors filming sports is before we had these mirrorless cameras, when we had the Sony EX1s and EX3s and that, is I did have to worry about lights flickering, like LED lights and stuff. If like
Well,
on
still do.
our yeah, but a mirrorless, you can always just crank your shutter and it'll go away. Like you're pretty good with that. Where I felt like with the EXs and that, it was harder to control.
Hmm.
Um,
You're talking about actual lights. You're not talking
yeah,
about like scoreboards and stuff like that.
no, no, no. Scoreboard
Yeah.
still, I still get it sometimes too with a
Yeah, yeah,
scoreboard.
exactly. Yeah.
It's yeah, because it's weird, eh? That some scoreboards are fine, some aren't, but you really have to crank the shutter to get that scoreboard properly. But when I do a scoreboard shot, I'll specifically film for that scoreboard. Like, say if I want to, I don't know, catch it counting down or whatever,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
then I'll calibrate for that because it's going to be different than my game action. But that's the only really time I've had struggles with lighting inside.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you just gotta accept as well that, like, if it's darker, it's darker. It is what it is, and it's like you can either choose to push the exposure in camera and have a bit more noise in your image. You're probably gonna not look as sharp and things like that, or you can just make it darker. And but depends on camera you have.
An easier excuse inside. Oh, this was the lighting. This is what I stuck with.
Yeah.
Right, so, like, look, you're outdoors, right? You're outdoors. The sky's lit up. How are you controlling that exposure chaos? Because it's tough. It's tricky to nail your exposure outside.
Yeah, well, I think, like, first of all, definitely have a variable ND filter so that you can dial it down while keeping your ISO as low as possible, or on the native on the base ISO anyway, and your shutter speed not go too crazy with it. Well, unless that's the look you're going for, but once you're at the settings, sorry, shutter speed and aperture and all that, like once you're where you want to be, then simply use have the luxury of using uh, a variable ND to basically stay at those settings and not choose your settings only for the sole purpose of taking the brightness down. So if you can have that, then you're pretty much good to go. I think, like, after that, it's more about being aware of your surroundings. So, like, yeah, mostly the sun. Where is the sun in comparison with the game action? Where's the best angle? And it's not like it should always be behind you or anything like that. It's just, if it isn't, then it's all about composition. Make it work with what you've got. Something like a nice backlit shot can actually look pretty dope if it's done correctly. But like, yeah, you need to just embrace it and film it in a way that will make it look cool. So, and not just have like a player that looks like a shadow running through, and there's no, it just, it looks a bit silly. But but yeah, if it's more about composition and making sure like that you're at the right spot, and also different, the way some stadiums are built. Like if you're filming from one side and then everything in the background, and if there's nothing in the background, it just looks a bit empty, it looks weird. And because of all the light coming through, you won't see the player as well. But if you film on the other side and there's stands, now when you're filming in your background, then the stands, the people there, that'll be sort of a dark, will be like a dark wall sort of in the background, so the players will pop out more. So sometimes, just choosing your side just based on what's in the background can make a big difference as well. So yeah, just looking at your surroundings and looking at it through the camera and seeing what it looks like. And so like, oh yeah, when I film from this angle, it looks much better than from that angle. So if this angle still allows you to tell the story, then definitely use that one.
The first thing you said was ND filters. Now,
Yes.
outdoors, you need an ND filter. And the thing that I don't like about ND filters is I have so many of them now. I have ND filters for my mirrorless. I have ND filters for my drone. I have ND filters for my Pocket 3. I have ND filters for my GoPros. It's like, how many ND filters do I need? But once you have them and you see the impact they have on your image, it's addictive. You need them. Like, I'm always worried about when I'm packing my camera bag, do I got my ND filters? And it makes such a huge difference. The thing with ND filters is, though, it does take practice. You got to know your settings before you get an ND filter, and you got to know why you're using that ND filter. And all you're doing when you're outside is, it's so bright, I want these settings on my camera. That ND filter is going to help make my camera darker to let me achieve those settings. Now, it's not always the case. Like, I have an ND filter that's five stops. They have ones that are more. If for some reason I need more stops than that, then I'm going to do a couple hacks. I'll shoot at a higher frame rate to darken the image. I'll also then boost my shutter if I have to. But the problem with boosting your shutter always, instead of using ND, is you do kind of get that there's no motion blur. So your footage does look awkward to the eye. So you have to be comfortable enough to know that, okay, to achieve the look, to achieve the settings I want, this is the look I'm going to get. So it's give and take with it, with the ND filters, but they are very, very important. And honestly, if you don't have, go in and get it. Will enhance your videography.
Yeah, and it's a look that stands out. Like if you're able to, not that I like, it depends what you're filming. Like for game, yeah, when you're covering a game, because where I'm going with this is I'm like that shallow depth of field look. Um, when you're filming a game is not always ideal, but when you do it outdoors, whether it's during a game or an interview or whatever, it always looks very impressive and people love it because we rarely see it. Like we see it all the time indoors. But when you see it like a YouTuber, that's why like all these YouTubers often film themselves outdoors with like that super shallow depth of field, and it makes their videos look amazing because it's a look that we rarely see, because most people in a very bright sunny day will have to crank up the aperture and the shutter speed just to, sorry, to 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 expose properly, so you lose that shallow depth of field. So every time we see something that's outdoors and that's really shallow, it pops right away because we're not used to seeing it. So if you can create that look, that usually looks pretty cool. But yeah, when you're filming a game though, it's not always easy, it's not always recommended as well if you want to catch every action. But yeah, it's and variable NDs will definitely help you achieve that. Like you won't be able to get that shallow depth of field without an ND, and you might even need to go in the, yeah, in the 6 to 9 stops to be able to do it, especially if you're filming at 24-30 frames with a low shutter speed.
It's more work, right? It's more work to get those shots and more expensive equipment. Like, they're not cheap ND filters, especially when you get the more expensive ones. So it's an investment. But if you do want to pull off that look like you were talking about, like you see on YouTube all the time and that, well, that's what you need to pull off that look.
Well, actually, what do you think is the difference between a cheap, because there definitely are cheap ones on Amazon, for example. So what do you think is the difference between a cheap variable ND or ND and an expensive one?
So I have both, okay? I have both cheap and expensive. So I have a Freewell ND filter, which works perfectly fine, and then I have the Polar Pro Peter McKinnon one. The reason
Oh,
why
even
I
free well
upgraded,
is not super cheap.
I think I got it for like 80
There's like
bucks.
generic brands like what's that one called that you see everywhere on Amazon, like KNF
Oh,
Concept or
yes.
something like
Yeah,
that. Like
I have a
those
KNF
ones are
filter too.
usually the
Um, but that one is the polarized one I have. Anyway, the reason why I upgraded was because with the Freewell one, I never knew where I was on the ND filter. Like you turn it until you're dark enough and you go. The Polar Pro actually has the stops. So I know I'm 2 stops, 3 stops, 4 stops darker. And for me, I want the consistency. I want to know exactly where I was instead of going by hand, because sometimes I have to revisit a scene or come back later, or you're moving around and you don't want to just constantly adjusting. I want to know exactly where I was. So then in post, if for some reason my in-camera settings were not good, I know, okay, I'm 1 stop off, I'm 2 stops off. It's way easier for me to color correct. So that's why I made the jump. But it was from 80 bucks to 350 bucks. Like it's a big investment. But it does have some cool little features too. Like you never have to touch the lens. So you never have to touch it when you put it on your camera. It has 2 caps. One you unscrew, you screw on your camera, and then you pull it off and it has the cap. Or my Freewell one, or even my KNF one, you have to turn it, you put it on, and then your thumb always slips and you're stuck
yeah.
wiping the filter after and that. So those
It's harder
little
to go hard at trying to unscrew it when there's
exactly.
like with the Polar Pro, there's like that rubbery sort of cap that you can use and gives you a better grip sort of thing.
The Defender cappy. It's called the Defender cap,
Like,
okay?
sorry.
Um, I felt it was worth the investment for those little features. Just because peace of mind, I know exactly what stop I am. I know where before I was like, yeah, I'm about 3.5 turns and I think I'm okay. So that's why. That's really the difference.
There's also a big difference in quality in the sense that, like, first of all, the real cheaper ones, they'll often be like a bit of a color tint that comes with it because the glass is cheap. Like that's why the reason they're cheaper is because they're using cheaper materials. So with cheaper materials comes the fact that the glass is not 100% sort of see through. So there'll be a bit of a color tint. So it'll be once you put your ND filter, all of a sudden your image is a bit greener or a bit more magenta, things like that. Or there'll be vignetting because the concept of a variable ND filter is like two actually layers of glasses that you're moving in front of each other. And with the cheaper ones, yeah, you'll see on the edge of your frame, the darker you get, some sort of vignette being created. And sometimes it's actually helpful because if you're filming a lot of sky and the sky tends to be desaturated often, especially if you're overexposed a bit or toying with that line anyway. Yeah, adding a bit of darkness on the top of your shot will make the sky more blue and saturated. And but that means it does that no matter what's in your frame. So yeah, sometimes it can help, but most of the time it's bad. It's not great, and it does it all around. It's not just at the top. And the other thing is that every time you add a filter in front of your lens, you're technically adding something that can go wrong. Like if so, every time, every layer you add affects the quality of your image. So if you're adding something that is super high quality, super clean, everything's great, probably not going to make any difference. But if you're adding something that's, yeah, like I said, materials are cheaper, it's not as good, then it's probably taking away a little bit of sharpness. Like I said, it's changing the color, it's doing all these little things that are not drastic, but if you add them all, yeah, that's why you get 80 versus $300, and it becomes a point where it's like, how much money, like, am I saving $200, or am I just ruining all my footage? So when I say ruining all my footage, again, it depends what you're doing. If you're just having fun, practicing, getting better, who cares? But like, if you're trying to get, the maximum, if you're getting paid for what you do, you want to make sure that everything's tip top perfect, then $200 is a good investment. You know what I mean?
You're paying, like, with the Polar Pro ones, you're paying for the Peter McKinnon name also, because some of their other filters that have similar features are cheaper. So you have to understand that too, why you're paying this stuff. So you have a filter. You're indoors right now. We're indoors right now. Do you have a filter on your camera right now?
Yeah, I do have a mist filter. Mist filters are the videographer's version videographer's version of a, like, Instagram filter, like a Snapchat filter to make you look pretty. So, but because it's a videography thing, it looks like it's normal, it's technical, but really that's all it is. It just flattens the imperfections, just to gets rid of little imperfection in your image, so my skin looks a touch better. But that's in this context. But I'd use it for sport as well. It just gives it a bit more of a cinematic look. Just makes, nothing. It's not as harsh, so the light will be. It's a diffuser, really. That's what it does. So it diffuses the highlights in your image. So it softens it a bit. So yeah, it just looks more like film like. And yeah, that's the point of it.
So I have one on my camera too. I have the short stash one by Polar Pro, but it's a mist and a mist and a polarizer. So it's both. It's pretty good. The only thing is when I do use it in, say, hockey or basketball courts, I'm not so crazy of what it does to the lighting.
Well, it's hit and miss, yeah.
I try not to get the lights really in my shot. For interviews, though, I do use it a lot. I do like how it softens the skin a bit, and it does make the image a little bit darker. And like, I'm shooting mine. My native ISO is 800, so for me, I feel like that does help a bit. But I don't know. I only got one because you had one, and I was like, I can't let you look prettier than me, so I I shelled out the $100 and got one.
You thought a filter was gonna address that?
Yeah, yeah, I thought so. I thought so. I was wrong. Okay,
News
guys,
for
I
you,
was wrong.
buddy.
I want my money back. All right. So, what are the differences between indoor and outdoor camera movements then?
Well, I think, yeah, it comes back a bit to what I was saying earlier about considering where you are, like, to the sun, and trying to be, um, integrate the sunlight into your camera position, decisions, and camera movements and things like that. Indoors, I'm more concerned about, because usually indoors you're more restricted in, where you can go and things like that, especially if it's a smaller gym. There's places that it's not that you're not allowed, it's just that there's no space. Like, for example, there's a few basketball gyms that I've filmed here that, there's literally, like, there's the baseline, and the wall is like not even like 3 feet, away. So they literally have, like, mats on the walls just so that the players can land into something soft. So in that gym, I'm not really hanging out on the baseline much. So yeah, it's more like just trying to find ways to make camera movements in a restricted sort of situation. So sometimes I'll go behind the team's bench, for example, because that's where they'll be the most space, and because it's usually like high school and stuff, they don't mind. So I'll do maybe like a bit of a pan, especially if I got a gimbal. And that's the other thing, like, being indoors, the gimbal, I feel, is a lot, like, it'll, not that you can't use it outdoors, but I think you'll get more value out of it indoors because it's a smaller thing. So, like, yeah, I'll move behind the bench so I can follow the action with the bench in the foreground. If I can do it in the crowd, I will. But, like, yeah, the high school gyms anyway that I've been to, you know, the basically on one side you got the teams, on the other side you got the crowd, and they're up against the wall up until that line. So there's not really any space to sort of walk around in the crowd while the game is going. But yeah, it's just being creative with that gimbal. I'll try to get as many dynamic shots as I can. So maybe starting quite low and then going up as the ball goes up and things like that. And then outdoors, it's more about, yeah, trying to, now there's tons of space. So it's like, where can I go to get a different angle that I've never got before? Like, should I go in the stands, actually go up and get that downwards angle, or should I go, at the back of the field and get the action coming towards me, go on the sideline, or you get like a super close up if it's football of like just like not the huddle, but like when they start to play and things like that, just the players lining up and getting that close up shot just straight bang on, like with that perfect angle sort of thing. Or should I go, I don't know, I can go at an angle, so that way if it's a pass, like a 10, 15, or 20-yard pass, I can get it coming towards me. If it goes the other way, it kind of ruins it, but when it comes towards you, it's actually a great shot. So like just walking around a lot more, getting different angles basically, instead of, I'd say the difference is, long story short, when I'm indoors, the movements are more like, in between, like my hands and the gimbal and things like that, where outdoors it's more my positioning that changes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because inside, right, tighter spaces, faster paced games, wider lenses, usually, um, limited room to move. Outdoors, you got big playing fields, slower plays sometimes, slower plays, right? Because well, at least it looks slower in our camera. You use longer lenses, but you yourself are walking around more. If you're trying to cover more angles and trying to get stuff, you yourself have more space to cover. Where, a hockey rink or a basketball court, it's fairly small compared to a soccer field or a football field. So it takes you longer to get from A to B, in at least in amateur sports. Um, but you know what I like about outdoor sportsy?
But
It's easier to fly my drone, buddy. It's easier to fly my drone. I just put that in there so we can talk about drones. No,
yeah, of
I
course.
think no, but outdoor sports is great for drone shots. You have a nice
Mhm.
drone shot, say of the opening kickoff, or soccer where they kick it backwards. I don't even know what it's called because I'm not really a soccer fan. I want to say face off,
Kick
but
it
it's not called.
backwards.
Yeah, what do they
Oh,
call
you
it?
mean like, oh, when the game
Opening
starts?
kick? Yeah. What do they call it in
Kickoff.
soccer? Kickoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can do that in soccer too. You could do flybys of the crowd. You could do those establishing shots where you're coming to the stadium and the game's already started and you fly over. So it definitely gives you some cool perspectives. And outdoors, you got your sideline zooms and you got platforms. Like when I do Alouettes or you do Alouettes, there's camera platforms, and that helps you get an advantage to different angles that you wouldn't always get. We're indoors. If you go to an indoor high school basketball game, there's no platform for your camera. There's no way to get like a higher shot unless you're walking up the bleachers and you get as high as you can go, and that's the best you could do. Where football, soccer, there are platforms positioned for the best angles for you. So that's one of the biggest differences I find from outdoors to indoors.
No, no, it's a good point. And equipment wise, like I know we saw, we bring a few other things when we go outdoors, but like what's, like for example, the weather. Like, do you use like a rain cover? Do you use a filter that just to protect your lens? Like, do you, like if it's a rainy day or something? Like, what would you bring extra?
I should have a rain cover. I don't. I don't have one. I don't have one. I've used plenty of other things instead of a rain cover, like a plastic bag or cut a hole in something. But I do think it's something that I should have in my camera bag, and most sports videographers can, because nothing can ruin your camera more than the weather. Um, I usually have a filter on anyway when I'm outside, so my lenses is pretty protected, and I make sure that my lenses are weather sealed. Now, 95% of all lenses say they're weather sealed, but not all of them are that great. So that's why I would definitely go with like a rain sleeve or something.
Hmm.
Um, I've had issues in the past with like dust though, where like say if you do baseball, if you're outside and it's windy, it's more I've had more issues with dust than rain. Where your lens gets dirty, your camera feels a little bit grimy and stuff like that. I don't really like that. So then I'll bring in the camera, I'll use my little air gun, I'll clean off as best as I can, wipe down the parts I can, and try and keep my camera as clean as possible. So I do feel like after you film some outdoor sports and that, give your camera a little bit of maintenance. Just take a look at it, make sure it's all cleaned up. Make sure that none of the ports were open, because you don't want any dust or particles to get in there. That's the hardest part about filming outside, honestly, is the weather. Because indoors, you're not really worried. Once you make it inside, whether it's raining outside, it doesn't affect you at all. You're good. You're comfortable. But outdoors, like, I did a football game last year where I think I had every season. It started off, we were sweating. Then it rained a bit. Then it got super windy. I thought I was going to fall off this this platform. And then it got really, really cold. By the end, I was shivering because I didn't have a sweater. So these things happen when you're in outdoor sports, where when I'm inside, usually when I show up, the temperature stays the same. Maybe I sweat a bit because I'm running around, but the venue temperature hasn't really changed.
What you said about the clothing just now, that's one of the low key is something that people don't really think about, but makes a huge difference. So the thing where if 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 you're there for a while, yeah, bring a sweater, because if you're gonna be cold and ensuring like this, gonna change everything. You're not gonna move as much, or you're not gonna be in the mood. You're just not gonna be well. You're not gonna fit. You're gonna shake a lot more. Like, so if you're comfortable, if you're warm when you need to be warm, like, then you'll be able to do whatever you need to do, and goes the other way as well. Like if it's gonna be like a super hot day, if you can be in shorts, be in shorts. Like, just be comfortable, so that it allows you to do your job properly and not be annoyed by everything around you. But in terms of the rain, I'm like you. Like, I do own a rain cover, but I don't think I've ever used it. I may have used it once. Not, I don't particularly. It's not like I filmed like in the rain hundreds of times or anything like that. But I was just lucky, I guess. But to be honest, I think that rain covers are a bit overrated, in the sense like people think that it's gonna rain, the rain's gonna get into the camera and then it's gonna explode, or it's gonna die forever. Where it's really not the case. Like, the problem is not they're the same thing, but I was gonna say the problem is not the the rain getting into the camera. It's more humidity being inside and sort of playing with the small little electronics inside your camera. But most of the time, because I had like a flood in my office where like the cameras were completely flooded, they wouldn't turn on. And similar to like a phone, like, this, if your phone fell in the toilet or in the tub or whatever, like, just put it in rice and wait a week and it'll probably work. Like, same goes for anything electronic. So like with your cameras, if you do like turn it on after it's been exposed to water or rain or whatever, and it's doing funny stuff where it's not turning on, just leave it for like a few weeks, maybe a month, whatever. And then at some point, because mine, that's exactly what happened. I was called the insurance, and they made a list of everything that wasn't working. And on the day, because they were like, oh, hold on, like, we're actually going to show up, like, when can we come and look at all this stuff? And on the day or the day before that the guy showed up, I tried to turn it on again just to check, and all of a sudden my cameras are working. So
Oh,
I'm like,
wow.
whoa, what just happened? So yeah, I was a bit stressed about if
So you
if
re-put
they
them in
are gonna
water,
pay
right?
up
To
or
get the
not.
insurance claim? You could tell me off air after.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't really mind saying, it's not like I'm gonna get in trouble now, but I did put them in water in the first place because I wanted to make sure that, like, because it was basically, it did rain on them, but they were
Yeah, I saw
still
the video of it, the water coming in the
technically,
ceiling and all that
yeah,
back in the day. Yeah.
but they was technically still working. So it's like, but do I want to keep those cameras that I was thinking of getting rid of anyway? Because they were old cameras that didn't do 4K. They were C100s. And I was definitely at the point where I was tired of them. And I was like, I'm already tired of them. Am I gonna still keep working with them, knowing that they've been exposed to that much water, blah blah blah? Or I can just, bring them with me in the kitchen and add a bit of extra water in the right places, and then for sure get new ones. So yeah, I'll leave it to that. But
Yeah, you don't have these worries with action cameras. You don't have to worry about
true.
water and that. Mind you, I did get a good question the other day from my friend Ian. he called me and he's like, "What kind of GoPro you have?" So I tell him, he's like, "You have I changed the doors so I could put a USB-C connection and have it hooked up to a battery for longer shoots." Okay. He goes, "Do you have the original doors?" I'm like, "Yeah, somewhere. Why?" He's like, "Well, because your new doors don't seal the water." So he's going on a trip to Jamaica. He's like, "Can I borrow your doors?" And I'm like, "Where did I put those doors?" Anyway, I found them. It took about 45 minutes for me to track them down, but I did save those doors, but not realizing that actually by me switching to these doors to make my life easier on one job, now they're not waterproof. So I have to switch those doors back if I'm ever going to use it in a wet situation.
Better. I
See?
know you like to film in the
And
pool.
that's it. That's it. Summer is coming, you know. There are kids camps that need a pool shot, so I will be there.
Exactly. I do think that rain and all that, like the how much people are scared of rain, like it's a bit over. Like it's very hard to break a camera just because of a super rainy day. But you do want to be better safe than sorry sort of thing. And but in terms of like, as long as it's not like too heavy rain, that like you can always survive a drizzle or whatever, and it's not that big of a deal. Like it's always good to have, if you still have like your lens hood, especially if it's a more like a longer one. Like it always helps for to have basically less raindrops going on your lens, because the hood will sort of block most of it. Or at least if you can have something just to protect the top of your camera, protects the camera, protects the lens. Whether it's an umbrella or just like a sheet of cardboard or something. But yeah, otherwise, because the other way around is more like, I've had cameras like in super high, super warm weather, and I turn on the camera and just dies on me. I'm like, what the hell happened? And yeah, the motherboard fried, and that's it.
Really?
There's no turning back from that one.
Bricked. The camera's bricked, just like that.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I don't know if the weather was actually the reason, but just bad connection, whatever it was, and that was it. Like that's much more harmful than a bit of rain. That's for sure.
The only issue I'm always afraid outdoors is, especially when it's hot in the summer, is overheating. My camera overheating, because I don't have the FX3 like you with the built-in fan. So I do use the Ulanzi fan, and it works. It works for what I need, and it does the job. I mean, even sometimes there has been instances in the past where if I'm shooting indoors at a high frame rate, that the little icon comes on, but the camera has never heated. Now, before we wrap this up, um, are you editing your indoor outdoor footage any different? Are you doing anything different to your footage?
Not really. I think if there is a lot of sky in my outdoor footage, I might try to play with the curves and that, like to just maybe get the sky, the saturation in the sky back without affecting too much of everything else. Uh, Obviously depends on the color of the uniforms, but yeah, maybe some of that, maybe adjusting if there was a lot of backlit shots, having to play with the shadows and the contrast so that it doesn't look too washed out. um and indoors, if it's more of making sure I do a proper white balance. And sometimes it's just out of your control. If there's neon lights, but there's also windows, you definitely have very different color temperatures going. So different parts of the gym will look very different. So it's adjusting to that. Usually, there's probably three different sections tops. So once you adjust all three, then it's copy and paste sort of thing. But yeah, other than that, I don't know. Do you have anything else?
No, I pretty much try and color match the lighting when it changes, and that's about it. White balance. I'm pretty on my white balance when I change locations all the time, so I keep it pretty managed like that. But it's is something that I'm definitely always thinking about, is white balance. Now, I did write down a question for you. Actually, it's specifically for you. Do you ever build like a custom LUT for indoor games or stadiums?
Yes, I do. I
You
did.
do?
Well, my in my LUT pack, there's one. It's called the YMCA. It's built for to push the shadows a bit to make it look to help with low lit gyms. There's what else could be good in these situations? The other ones are not really affecting like. Well, I know there's a Friday Night Light one that's to address more of the contrast between like the harsh lights of the stadium and the fact that everything else is quite dark. Obviously, there's still some adjustments sometimes to be made depending on your footage and how it's exposed and stuff. But yeah, I do have like creative LUTs that can give you a bit of a leg up, which will probably be available in the
And
link
really,
below.
I actually like the 30 for 30. That's the one
Oh,
that
yeah.
I if I'm gonna use one of your LUTs, I like that one the best. But I figured, you know what, it was a good segue since we're talking about editing. I threw in the LUT question because we haven't talked about your LUT pack or sound effects packages in a while, you know. So I figured since we just had our 1 year anniversary, I'll try and
Mm,
throw you a little bone and get you a couple extra sales on your LUT packs. Now,
that's nice.
before we wrap up here,
Yes.
all right, it's time. Tell us the mistakes you made while filming indoors or outdoors.
Well, I'm sure I've made tons of mistakes, but specific to that, well, the only one that comes to mind wasn't even my mistake. Like it was just more interesting to talk about that one. It's not that I want to put other people under the bus, but
It's not one of my mistakes, is it?
yeah,
Am I the
no,
culprit?
no, no. But I remember when I first got to Australia, actually, my first job, I was like a producer for a production company that was doing like TV shows that were only like sports related, but it was internationally. So we would hire crews in all parts of the world. My show was about stadiums, like iconic stadiums around the world. So we would hire crews to go film at these stadiums, organize the shoot and stuff. So you get a local crew and be there at this time, and you have to interview that guy and whatever. We do like a shot list, but we've never met those people. So like we just look at their portfolio and things and assume that they'll be good at what they do. And it was our first shoot. It was in the UK. We filmed like the famous cricket stadium over there at Lords, which is like, yeah, it's like an old school, like it's been there for like 100 years or something. And there was another one as well. But anyway, we get the footage and it's so overexposed. It's not even close. It's not like genre, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, so the highlights are really overexposed. It's just not the entire image is white. Like there's hardly anything to it's just ridiculous. And like how can you how can you possess a camera? How can you be a professional cameraman and give me a result that, like, to be honest, I would have asked my mother to do it or my 5 year old niece and it would have been better. I'm like, how can you mess up that badly? And the only thing we could come up with was that, because back then it was still like camcorders, and you know, like how if in the LCD screen you can't see anything, you can push up like the brightness, or it's like it was something like that. Like they must have changed the setting of the LCD screen and not realize that. So they were sort of maybe they pushed it way up for the LCD screen, but then when they went into a situation, they're like, "Oh, this is." I don't know. They pushed it way down. Sorry, because it was too bright outdoors, and now they're pushing everything else just to see something in the LCD screen, not realizing that that's not what they're recording. Anyway, it was atrocious. It was, and we were waiting on that footage to do our pilot, our trailer, so that we can start selling the series, and it was just, yeah, it was a mess. So yeah, that's the biggest mistake. Expensive mistake, actually. I think we eventually got them to like reshoot like a few things, mainly the interviews. But yeah, it was a mess. What about you?
I have two. One mistake I make every summer. I go to film hockey camps or I film hockey in the summer, and then there's outdoor training. And I assume that after being in the rink, I could run right outside and get this footage where my camera then fogs up and I'm stuck trying to wipe my lens or wait 5-10 minutes for my camera to warm up to go to be able to shoot this shot. So there's that I always make because I always seem to forget that it's damn cold in the arena and it's hot outside. The second I bring that cold camera outside, it's going to fog. So I always forget about that. And every year I'm stuck in that situation. And one of the dumbest mistakes I made is I'm filming a music festival, Chiaga, and I have an interview with Ellie Goulding, who's was an up and coming artist at the time. She's big now. And I was running all over the place, run and gun, run and gun, run and gun. And I had my white balance set to outside. And this was on a mini DV tape. And then I go in a trailer and I'm rushed. The interview is like, hey, we're going now. The interview's now. And my footage was so blue. It was so blue. But part of me likes a little bit of blue in my image. I'm not going to lie. But this was way too much. So I had to color correct like crazy. And then I had to put a look on it and do all this stuff to finally get it back to almost normal. And it worked out. But man, at the time when I saw that raw footage and I saw she had blue skin, I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to fix this. So from that moment on, white balance has been drilled in my head whenever I switch settings and that. And I'll tell people, hang on a second, I got to do my white balance. I got to do this. Where back then I was still young. I was still naive. I don't want to make this rock star or whatever wait for me. I just started pressing record. I'm like, yeah, we're good. And we were not. So white balance is so important, but I learned from that mistake. I recovered. The footage was okay. The interview came okay. It just took a lot of extra work and also helped me with my color correction. So it was a win-win all around.
Exactly. In the end, it was all for the best.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for this episode of Game Day Glare, but we are definitely looking forward to finally being able to shoot outside, even though it did snow this morning. But it's coming. It's coming.
Can't wait.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Can't wait for football season.
All right, guys. Well, take care, and we'll see you next episode.
See ya.